Welcome to the BTCC Roundup show. I'm delighted to be joined by Colin Turkington, 4 times champion in British touring cars, completed 500 races at Snetterton last weekend. I couldn't believe it. It's unbelievable. And fantastic results that weekend as well. But great to see him. But also he was voted driver of the day at Snetterton by all the users of the BTCC app, which is fantastic. I think he's done a great job and well deserved. And also now he's in the lead of the championship. So we're going to have a chat with Colin, find out what it's like to be a touring car driver, what it's like to be the guy in the lead of the championship, what it's like to win 4 championships and be an all-round good guy, really, and how you get that done. Also joined by Matt Salisbury from Inside BTCC. He's got all the facts and figures and got loads of facts and figures on Colin, unsurprisingly, after such a stellar career. But firstly, Colin, what about Snetterton? What a great weekend for you.
Yeah, hi Shaun. Great to see you again. Yes, Netterton was probably as big a surprise for me as it was for the people watching. In terms of results, I was going into the weekend. Snetterton's always been quite good territory for the BMW, whether it's been the 3 Series or the 1 Series. But I really wasn't going into the weekend thinking A, I would have a shot at pole position, or B, really, I thought maybe race 3, I could maybe get a reverse grid and potentially win a race that way. So it was quite a surprise to qualify on pole. And then as we've seen many times this year, track position counts for so much. So starting on pole gives you a good shot of winning race 1. Managed to do that, albeit under a lot of pressure from my teammate Jack for the whole race. And then converted also race 2 as well. So it's probably been easily has been my strongest weekend of the season so far. Big points haul, but also nice to get a couple of proper race wins. Up until that point, I'd only won 1 race, reverse grid race at Brands Hatch. So it's nice to qualify on pole and win a race. That's why we do it. It's the joy and the satisfaction you get from winning. So strong weekend, and I'm not sure if I can do it again at any stage this season. It definitely gets tougher from here on in.
Well, definitely. I mean, it bodes well for the rest of the season. You touched on it there because obviously there's always lots of talk about front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. I actually personally really like the mix. At the end of the day, the series it reflects the cars that you see on the road, which is why the public can get so involved with it. We're not talking about Lamborghinis and Porsches and things like that. There's nothing wrong with Lamborghinis and Porsches, but we're talking more everyday cars that people would use on the road. So tell me, I mean, what makes a circuit that could work well for rear-wheel drive compared to front-wheel drive, or do you think it evens itself out over the season?
You're exactly the same as me, Shaun. That's what drew me to the BTCC. When I was a kid, because it's race versions of everyday road cars, and whether people drive a BMW or another brand, it's easy then to have an allegiance to a particular team and a particular driver. And, I think the championship is a lot more interesting, the fact that we have the mix of front and rear wheel drive, because, naturally, like many other sports, then certain cars have strengths and weaknesses, and, some will come to the fore in some weekends and maybe not on others. And, you see this regularly through the seasons, swings in terms of performance, between front and rear wheel drive cars. And a lot of it's down to conditions, ambient weather conditions. If it's really hot like it was in Snetterton, that's perfect for the rear wheel drive cars, because we've got this 50-50 weight distribution, obviously putting the power down through the rear axle and doing all the steering with the front axle. So you're just not putting as much stress through, let's say, the front tires that you would with a front wheel drive car, where you're putting the power down on steering. So and also the type of circuit is quite important as well. So with the rear wheel drive BMW, we always tend to go well at Croft, places like Oulton Park, Knockhill, circuits that are quite technical and have a lot of slow speed corners where traction is important. So we get a good run out of the slow speed corners, and that's really the strength of the BMW. Or I would say historically that's been the strength of the BMW. But since we've had the 3 Series, that's really changed things for us, because now we've also become strong in this, what I'd call the medium and high speed corners. So Snetterton last weekend, corners like turn 1 and through Coram, the penultimate corner, that's where we have a good high speed balance as well. So it swings about. I think generally for me, front wheel drive cars always start the season really strong and end the season really strong, and we have a bit of a purple patch in the middle, but it pretty much evens itself out once we get to Brands in October. So it's quite important how the weather plays out once we get to Brands, because the past 2 years ago I went into Brands Indy with quite a decent lead. I think it was like 15 points or something, and the weather conditions just were really difficult. It was cold, it was wet. I think it was mid-November, and we just struggled to get the car working. So I think weather conditions are really important.
Yeah, I mean, so how does that work for you? You go into a championship decider, you've got a big lead, and then on the day the car doesn't work well. That's got to be a bit of you've got to have quite a strong head to be able to deal with that as well. I mean, that's both on and off the track.
Yeah, it's tough when things aren't going your way any given weekend, because it's very difficult to turn things around quickly. And I think we've seen that even more this year. When in the past, when we've had option tires and success ballast, if you have a bad race, but the next race, you're taking the weight out of the car and maybe you're going on to the soft compound, you've seen guys come from the back right up onto a podium position. So you were able to turn your day around, but it seems to be more difficult to do that this year. But when it's not going your way, you just got to take it one step at a time, one race at a time, and try and get any little point that you can. And that's already happened to me this year. I think it was Donington Park. That was the opening event of the year. Qualified second, decent race 1, but then had an issue off the line in race 2. So I was I left the grid 10 seconds after everybody else, but I managed to get back through to, I think it was 14th or 15th. So, you grab 1 or 2 points, and race 3, then I got through to 8th position, something like that, grab a few more points. So, it's always, people say it's on your bad weekends that you win this championship. It's easy it's easier to score well on your good weekends when you're performing well, your car's performing well. But when things aren't going your way, if you can still bag whatever you can, 10 points, those are the really important ones, because it's easy to give up and say, okay, I'm not getting anything out of this weekend, I might as well mentally park the whole thing. But if you can dig deep and, grab a few points, those are the ones that really matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, one person who was really pleased when I said I had you on board was Matt Salisbury, because sometimes, depending on who the drivers are, and obviously we're not going to say who, he sometimes struggles a bit to get lots of stats about their career. But I think he's overloaded with stats this weekend for this interview. So Matt, what have you got on Colin for us to let us know a little bit more, an insight of of what makes him tick?
Well, I mean, there's no shortage really when it comes to Colin, which you'd kind of expect when someone's done as many races. I mean, before I get onto the stats, I think Colin raised an interesting point there about having to maximise the bad weekends in the championship, and it's the consistency through the season. He's probably one of the drivers who showed that best during his career, because, of course, a few years ago, he came out at the end of the season winning the title when he'd only won a single race all season. So it's kind of, Colin is the prime example of how picking up points over the year is what's key to winning a championship in the BTCC, and it's partly why he's got 4 of them to his name already. Now, as we touched on at the start, 500 races were reached at Snetterton, which is a fantastic landmark for him. It's not a landmark that many drivers have reached. We don't have many drivers have that longevity in their career, but it was a weekend that brought up another landmark for Colin. It was one that was mentioned on the circuit commentary, mentioned on TV, but he 52 wins in the BTCC for WSR. And that is a record equaling performance, because only Matt Neal and Gordon Shedden on 52 wins at Dynamics have won as many races for a single team in their time in the championship. Now, 52 wins for WSR, but 63 wins overall. So that takes Colin to joint second on the overall list of winners alongside Matt Neal. And of course, with Matt no longer being part of the grid and Colin having a pretty good car underneath him, I think there's probably a very, very good chance that by the time we get to the end of the season, Colin will have second place on that list all to himself. 2 wins at the weekend from start to finish means that Colin's now led the most laps of any drivers this season. He scored the most bonus points of anyone on the grid, because of course you pick up bonus points for leading a lap, pole position and fastest laps, and those extra bonus points can, be the critical thing at the end of the season. I think they're sometimes maybe overlooked a little bit when people are looking at the point standings, but I think 12 bonus points Colin's now scored, which is, a good chunk towards his advantage at the front. A record on Saturday in qualifying, 18th pole position that Colin scored since we went to the NGTC formula. So that means he's now got more pole positions than anyone else in the current cars. He was level with Jason Plato going into the weekend. And just to touch on Snetterton, it's something that I raised with Colin when we had a chat at the end of the weekend. Everyone always goes on about being the king of Croft and having that fantastic record there. But arguably in the last few seasons, his record at Snetterton has been a match for anything he's done when we've been up at Croft. Since the 3 Series came in, Colin's won half of the races at Snetterton. So it just shows in particular how strong that 3 Series package is when we go to Snetterton each season. There's probably a few other drivers on the grid wish they had a similar record.
Well, that's right. I mean, Colin touched on that earlier in when he's saying that the mid to high speed corners are stronger in the 3 Series than they were in the 1 Series before. Still with a good traction and the low speed corners as well. So that's maybe a helping hand. But one thing also to remember there, we've given him enough credit there, haven't we? Is there any more? But what the important thing, which I have to slip in here, is it's very important to remember sort of the whole team, if you like. And I'm not talking about West Surrey, I'm talking Team Turkington, because I sort of have a closer look at that over a race weekend, because I'm working with your teammate Jake Hill as team manager on that car. But again, we're all sort of one big team, and even it gets a bit feisty every now and again, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. That's why we all do it. But it's interesting and very important to see from behind the scenes that your wife Louise and also your boys but maybe the boys are a bit more of a hindrance than they think they are. They're helping a little bit with organising stuff, but Louise is really your team manager, your own personal team manager. I mean, how does that work? I mean, because sometimes that can be quite hard when a husband and wife are working together so closely in quite a stressful environment, you have to say. But you guys seem to have it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, when Matt rolls out all the stats, it all sounds good, and it all sounds like it's just happened and it's quite easy. But nobody sees the work that goes in the background to make sure that when I'm in the position with a good car, that we can actually deliver results and win races. And it is a team sport, Shaun, as you've rightly said. It's a big part of the job happens down at West Surrey Racing, led by Dick Bennett, and given me myself, Jake and Stephen, the cars capable of doing the job. But of course, it's it's up to me to present myself the best possible version, really, every race, every year, and that's what my big focus is on, is maximizing my own performance. And of course, I always need help with doing that. Competing in BTCC, it's not just about doing the 3 races. There's so many other commitments, both pre-weekend and over the course of the weekend. So naturally you can find yourself being pulled in all sorts of directions and trying to please everybody. But it's so important to remember that I'm there to try and win races. I'm there to try and drive the car quickly, and that's where my energies need to be focused. So I have basically my family and predominantly Louise there to help me with that, help me on on every side really of maximizing my performance. So it's all the small details that add up to to make my job a bit easier. So just making sure that let's say my food is scheduled, so before the race weekend, obviously we know when the races are going to be. So communicating, Louise will communicate with the caterers to make sure that the food will be there at the right time. She'll look after things like my hydration over the course of the weekend, and force feeding me drinks and salt and energy bars, and of course communicating with the media as well, because there's there's obviously a lot of requests come in for pieces of my time over the course of the weekend, but it's difficult to communicate with everybody every weekend. So Louise will manage that and sort of manage my workload, and just generally be there if I need anything. There's always a bit of a last minute. There can always be a last minute panic where your back's sore before a race. You need a bit of deep heat rubbed in, or
the famous bag of peas,
or as we've all seen live on ITV, a bag of peas. So sometimes I've been on the grid before, and I've been so busy before I get into the race, you just feel your energy's dipping, and I'm like, Louise, can you please go and get me a shot of coffee? So she'll literally sprint to the truck and get me just a quick shot of coffee. So it's just really Louise basically there should I need anything on the course of a race weekend, and even people laugh, but she'll drive me to and from a race weekends, and basically that gives me time. That gives me say we're going to Thruxton this weekend, that gives me 2 hours to sit in the passenger seat and just be, I can use that time to still be looking at onboards or looking through my notes or whatever, just final bits of preparation, so just making the most of my time. So it is a big team effort. And you mentioned the kids as well. The kids are there to help Louise. They're doing stuff on TikTok. They're looking after our guests. So and it's a great education for them as well, Shaun. I think they learn as much on a BTCC weekend as they will at school. So it's nice to be able to to educate them through the business side of the sport. So they're learning a lot, and it's, you never know. I always say you never know when your last season of racing is, or in the BTCC. So it's important that we sort of share all the moments and memories together, and especially like last weekend at Netterton, it's great to have everybody there.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it is a real team effort, and you see it so much more when you see it behind the scenes. Because obviously, I've known you 12 years now. We've been in British touring cars. Me at the back of the grid, you at the front of the grid to start with. But and then to see it behind the scenes, you can see how much work goes into making Team Turkington so successful. So it's great to see it from that side, and then you realise how much work goes into it behind the scenes to get that success. So people need to look at that. Everybody thinks it's all there's another word I can use, but I won't use that, sunglasses and ice cream or whatever, but it's really hard graft to make it happen. So, I mean, looking back at that weekend, that is going to be quite the last couple of weekends have been strong, but last weekend, I think, has really maybe a step ahead. I mean, one driver who really impressed me at the weekend was Tom Ingram, who I thought he did a stellar job, to be honest. The Hyundai was obviously hooked up, but at the end of the day, he's quite a long way ahead of his teammates, and, Dan Lloyd's no slouch as well. So Tom's really making the most of it, and you've got to see him as probably your sort of biggest contender, really, looking into it, especially if he's so quick when it's so hot. When it comes to a slippery cold Brands Hatch, I would be a little bit nervous with him sitting in the mirror.
Yeah, most definitely, and you're right. Tom is, you really can't rule anybody out at this stage of the season. You only have to think back to the early part of the season when Josh was streaking ahead. So you see this swings of momentum, and Tom has been there and been consistent from the start. And even though I had the 2 wins and a P6. his three podium finishes still adds up to a significant amount of points. So didn't in fact gain that many points on Tom, and he's had a very strong package all year. And of course you can't forget Ash Sutton as well, who has been as consistent as ever. So it's although I'm leading the championship, the mindset hasn't changed. I'm still going into it like I'm the underdog, and I need to keep maximizing everything, keep scoring the points, and the last three events, you can't predict what will happen with weather, with conditions. It's just about grinding it out. You just have to keep digging in and keep trying to perform to your maximum and overperform where you can. But as Matt alluded to early in the conversation, I think a lot of the season has been about consistency, just about keep throwing the points in the bag. And I think that's what's exciting about this season, is that we don't have a roadmap to follow. Basically, when we go to Silverstone, we go to Brands, because obviously we've got we don't have the option tires, the Success ballast, with hybrid in 2022. So we don't know how that's going to play out at Silverstone on the straights. How big an effect the hybrid is going to have. From those who have none to those who have 15 seconds. So I think that's what's exciting and different about this year, is that. It's typical BTCC. You can't predict it. You'll never will be able to predict it. But my goal as ever is just to try and get to Brands, with a shout. And as we've seen many times before, it either goes your way on the day or it doesn't. So it's just about giving your best.
Something I'm curious about, just going off what Colin was saying there about touching on hybrid and ballast and everything. You're no stranger, Colin, to going into a race weekend leading the championship standings. And in the past, into this season, that would have meant going into a race weekend with maximum ballast on the car. Obviously, when you've got a strong engineering team around you, like you've got at WSI, you can spend a lot of time doing work on maximising the performance of a car with weight on board, so that you can qualify as strongly as possible and race as strongly as possible in that first race. But how does it change the approach this year when that's taken out of the equation and suddenly you're going into a race weekend knowing you've got no hybrid, whereas some of your rivals have got 15-second boost to that extra power?
I think, Matt, the mentality is the same. Whether you've got no hybrid or you have maximum ballast, obviously that brings you into the weekend, let's say, with one hand behind your back, compared to some of the others. But you also have to remember that it's all relative to your direct competition. So even though I have no hybrid to use, my direct competition will only have 1.5 seconds or 3 seconds, whatever. So, for me personally, the focus is just about maximizing the strength of your car, or the point on the circuit where in the past that you've been strong or you feel strong. And it's just about making sure that in that qualifying lap, you just maximize that area of the track so that you can deliver the maximum potential of the car. So it's it's a balance of performance. It's supposed to slow the driver down or make him less competitive. And mentally you have to accept that. And that's why I say going into Snetterton, I was surprised. It's always difficult to set expectations, I find, in this championship. I could have went into Snetterton thinking, okay, I have no hybrid, so if I qualify inside the top 10, then that's going to be a good result. But if you have that approach, then already mentally in your head, you've sort of pre-programmed that I'm going to qualify about 10th or 8th or whatever. So I think you just have to go in, obviously do your preparation, but go in with an open mind and, just try and deliver the most that you can. And I think, as we've seen many times this year, it's also very important to, just producing that one single lap doing it at the right moment. So just preparing the tires correctly for qualifying, and maximizing, getting the tires when they're at the peak. There's a good bit of lap time and performance there, and I believe that's why I was able to get on pole at Snetterton. It wasn't because I had a superior package or whatever. Obviously the BMW was very strong around Snetterton, but it was just during the time when the tires were at their peak. And again, that's what I'll be focused on at Thruxton. Thruxton, it's still going to be warm this weekend. It's an abrasive circuit, so the tires will come in quite quickly, but it's just about doing the lap time at the right moment.
So just going back to the introduction of hybrid this year, which is quite advanced technology, and the first outside of Formula One, the first series to run a proper hybrid system. Obviously, it's going to have a sort of a development year. There are going to be issues because it's quite a complex system, but I actually think it's added something to the racing. I think possibly it needs to be ramped up a little bit next year, so maybe you don't have as much in the races, because I think it does need to really sort of cut in a little bit more as the weight used to do, because definitely it was a real you've had more experience than most of carrying 75 kilos when you're fighting with somebody with no ballast. It's like trying to fight somebody with one hand, as you said, one hand tied behind your back. But I think it's really important, because motorsport is seen as something that is not the most environmentally friendly thing in the world, and we need to do everything to make that happen, as well with the synthetic fuel, which I think will gradually improve as well. And I think with all this stuff, it's a bit of everything, isn't it? Everybody thinks that, is it electric cars, is it hydrogen, or is this? It's going to be in the future a little bit of everything. So I think it's actually a good step forward for British touring cars. But on your side, to sort of celebrate your 500 races at the weekend, you had a special project which you started at the start of the year. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, exactly, Shaun. As you touched on, with BTCC moving, towards hybrid in 2022, and synthetic fuels, and the strive to be more sustainable future. I basically wanted to try and align myself with that, and we felt it was quite important that that as an established driver in the series, I wanted to try and make my mark as well, and try and not only reduce my carbon emissions. Obviously it's difficult when you're doing 30 races a year and traveling about the UK, but just to try and lower the carbon footprint and actually try and become carbon positive. So we embarked on a campaign really to support rainforest conservation in Peru, and planting mangrove trees in Madagascar. And obviously the mangrove trees are vitally important, basically in hoovering up all that carbon that's emitted in the world. So this is my 18th year in the BTCC. So we decided that for each race I would plant 18 mangrove trees, and for each race win we'd plant another 100, and for my 500th race we would plant another 500. So obviously we've done a lot of planting recently. So by the end of the season, we'll have planted over 1,000 mangrove trees. So that's just one step we're taking, Shaun. We're obviously, I'm driving a hybrid BMW road car now, and as a team we've omitted the use of single-use plastic bottles. So we're trying to take steps, to look after the world we live in, and hopefully, things will keep moving, in this direction.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important, and you'll always get people, especially with the world of social media and things, say, well, what's the point of that? That's not going to do this. At the end of the day, you've got to do something. If you don't do anything at all, we know it's where it's going to end up, and it's not going to be a very good place. But human beings have got to do more to help the planet. We're one of billions, so we're only going to make a little bit of a difference, but you've got to make a difference. So fair play to you for getting involved, and I'm sure the series will move on and on, doing more with synthetic fuel, and they pushing the hybrid side of things as well. And I know Goodyear, they're starting to do manufacturing processes that have a certain amount of rubber, and the manufacturing process is much better for the whole scheme as well. And I think that's the way for motorsports to survive. So, fair play for you to be up there leading the way. So that's good stuff. So further on from that, looking towards the end of the year, so you've had a great year so far. You've got a good head start. What's your plans heading into the year? How do you prepare? Or is it literally, as you said before, just grinding it out and just getting to the end, hopefully still with a points lead?
Yeah, it's always a difficult stage of the season, Shaun. It's not difficult, but I'd say, let's say, more intense. When you get to these last three meetings, you just feel the screw is turned a little bit, and every point matters a bit more, and even every session, every free practice session, becomes more of a psychological battle as well. So it's it is the best stage of the season. It's probably the bit that I enjoy the most is basically the opportunity to win. That's why we're here. And we've had both myself and Jack have had a strong season so far, and it's great to be in a position that we are as a team. We're contending on all fronts, but it's just about not changing too much from what I've already been doing so far this season. It's continuing to work hard, trying to arrive on a race weekend with the best setup on the car, and to be as prepared as you can be as a driver, because that's the thing with BTCC. There's so many elements outside of your control. As a driver, you're in control of such little, really, just your inputs in the car. So you just got to try and be on top of your own performance. Well rested, like I said before, well prepared going into the weekend. So from conversations in the past, that I tend to go into quite a bit of detail. It's things like onboards and just information I have from previous events, and just doing everything I can to try and eke out that last little bit of performance. But of course, you're always thinking about the bigger picture, but I find as well, you got to just try and take it one race at a time, because things get too stressful if you start looking too far ahead. If you're already looking to Brands Hatch and thinking about Brands Hatch or Silverstone and permutations, you just got to try and keep it simple, keep your mind clear, and just one race at a time, and just try and maximize each race. And can become a bit cliched, but that's always the philosophy that I've went with. Not trying to get too ahead of myself, because you never quite know what's around the corner. There's quite regularly there's a curveball just waiting on you. So. And also just trying to enjoy the moment as well, Shaun. This is the position we've worked hard to be in. So not forgetting to try and smile and enjoy the process, because if you don't actually enjoy the process of what we're doing, then ultimately it's going to be quite difficult. If you only enjoy the moments where you stand on the top step, it's you're not going to be able to sustain yourself, because it gets harder to win races. It gets harder to stand on the podium. So you have to try and enjoy the process as you move along through it, and not get too high, not get too low.
I think that's actually a good thing to say to drivers who are even starting out in their career. A load of the junior drivers look like they're having the worst time I've ever seen in some of the support races. And I go, "What? You've got to try and enjoy this thing. It shouldn't be the most horrendous thing you're going to do in your life. It should be the best thing you're going to do in your life." But that's good. But just going to ask Matt some questions, because we're talking about the guys who are up at the front of the championship. But Matt's got a few stats on some people a little bit further down who actually could end up being quite important to what happens in the championship overall in these next few races.
Well, we've got two drivers who are going to be celebrating landmarks at Thruxton this weekend, and one of them is very much a contender for the title in Ash Sutton, because he's going to be doing his 200th race. But Gordon Shedden does his 400th race this weekend, and you'd probably expect him to be in the mix this weekend, because we know that the Honda is quite a strong package around Thruxton. So you'd think that the Dynamics cars will maybe be a bit closer to the pace than they've been in the last few rounds. They've had a bit of a tough run of form, but a team like Dynamics, a bit like WSR, huge experience, huge knowledge, and you'd think they're going to come good again sooner rather than later. Another BMW that we could do with watching out for this weekend is Adam Morgan in the Sicily car. Him and George Gamble have both been doing a fantastic job in what are basically WSR customer cars. They've bought the cars from Dick and the team and have been doing a good job of running them for the last 2 seasons. Adam at Snetterton took his 26th independence class win, so it puts him into the top 6 in terms of independent class victories. I think he'll be. I'd expect him to be strong this weekend. But you touched on people like Dan Lloyd. I think Dan Lloyd will hopefully be strong at Thruxton for accelerate. He'll be trying to back up Tom's title bid and Tom Chilton as well, actually, because Tom Chilton in the last couple of rounds has improved his performance. And of course, the one man who perhaps everyone needs to be worried about is Josh Cook. Cook's had a really tough run of form in the last few rounds. He's dropped away a bit from that championship lead, but we all know how strong he is around Thruxton. And if Josh isn't there or thereabouts in qualifying and isn't there or thereabouts in the race, you'd have to say, even based on recent results, it would be a big surprise.
Yeah, no, I could see him getting back in amongst it. And one driver you didn't mention, who we mentioned in the last programme we did, who I said, well, maybe if he gets the sniff of victory, he'll reignite his competitive sort of juices, if you like, was Jason Plato. And obviously he got P2 in that last race before. But Colin, you've had experience sort of from afar, but also quite close up with Jason, because obviously you were teammates before when you were with BMR, wasn't it? With the Passat for a series or a season or 2, I can't remember now. But so what's he like to work with and race against?
Jason was a great teammate, Shaun. I had 2 seasons. The first one in the BMR VW, and then we moved across to the Subaru in 2016. So, anytime that you can align yourself with an experienced, fast teammate is excellent for your career, because there's so much that you can learn, and so much that I did learn from Jason, both on and off the track. And yeah, it's, I do look back with fond memories. there was obviously difficult times, as there is really with any teammate that you're competitive with. You both really want to win, but Jason has been a mainstay of the series since I started watching, and he brings so much experience, and his approach was very different to mine, and that's what I enjoyed seeing, how Jason approached his racing from a completely different angle than me, but we both sort of achieved the same result. So it opens my mind as well to think that potentially I can do this different as well. So, I think that the championship will be a poorer place when he's not about, because he definitely is a character and a fan's favourite, and I think a favourite of the drivers as well. He is he's good to race with on track now. You know where you stand with Jason, and you can get stuck in and have a good battle. So I will be sad to see him go, and you just think these guys are going to be here forever. And, that's why I was, explaining earlier how important it is to try and enjoy your time in BTCC. And especially when you get to my stage, this is 20 years since my debut, and you just think it's going to last forever. You never look at the day when it's all over. But when you get to, 40 plus, you start considering that, it could end quite soon. So, and I know that when I'm not racing at the BTCC, I'll look back and think that these were the best days, and these are the best days. So yeah, I'm sure Jason, like me, has thoroughly enjoyed his time in BTCC. He's had an amazing career. So it would be nice to see him go out on a high as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, talking about post BTCC, have you got any ideas or plans of what you might do? Would we see you back as a team boss, or do you think there's a bit of GT racing in you after this? It's difficult though, isn't it? Because it's so competitive, British touring cars. Anything else would seem, well, it's definitely different. But what about NASCAR? We've just seen Kimi Räikkönen have his debut out there. I reckon they'd like an Irishman out there.
Well, my youngest son Adam is pushing me at the moment to invest in his new ice cream venture. So I might just do something completely different and open an ice cream shop. It's I really don't know, Shaun. It's sometimes I think once my BTCC career is over, I just want to stop it and do something completely different. Almost start a new chapter and just do something completely different away from motorsport. Or I might still have that bug and that I would want to try something like GT racing, or I don't know if that will be for me until I try it. But I tend not to look too far ahead in life, because it's quite scary if you do. It's tends to be 12 months at a time. I stay focused on the job I'm trying to do, and then once we get to the end of the season, I sort of reassess, see how things are, see if I'm still happy, and then just make the next move from there. But I don't know. Hard to predict the future.
Well, but based on Jason's career, you've got a few years to go yet anyway. So I'm probably asking, it's a bit premature with the question probably, but that's great. But what I'd like to say, thanks very much for joining us. Good luck this weekend. Matt, thanks very much for your input as well. I know you've got loads of stuff to do, lots of work to do. Probably Louise has got you doing all the housework and everything around there as well. She got the Hoover behind that door, ready for you to do the upstairs carpets. I know what she's like. No, but that's great. Thanks very much. Good luck this weekend, and thanks for everybody watching.
Thanks, Shaun. Thank you.
Cheers.